Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Realm News. I hope that you are all having a really great week so far and that you are ready for some Minecraft Anthropology as today's episode topic. I have with me today a well-known guest who is no stranger to the show, NightSteak. But first, let me tell you who I am. I am your host, the Dark Lord. The one who puts the real in realm and expands your mind one block at a time. Now, back to what I was saying. I have a special guest back to the show who is not a stranger, NightSteak. You have heard him here before when he first came on to discuss a Minecraft movie with me the weekend it premiered, and he has been on to discuss the world's oldest Minecraft SMP, minecraftonline.com, where he is the proprietor of the largest museum in the world called Fredonia. It is my pleasure to have him back on the show. Today, we will be discussing the ancient structures that you see in the Overworld and the objects within them, along with their significance and the tantalizing theories that have emerged from their discovery. Some of the structures that will be mentioned today are the desert pyramid, the desert wells, the ocean ruins, and the trail ruins. We have a full episode for you all today, so let's get the show started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Realm News. I am your host, the Dark Lord. And I have a guest that you are all familiar with. He is NightSteak. Welcome back, my friend, back to Realm News. I'm happy to get you back on the show to discuss anthropology today. How have you been?
Hey man, I've been doing great. Thanks for having me back on. I love being here. And yeah, anthropology. I mean, this has got to be like one of my favorite updates Minecraft has released. So I'm really excited to be talking about it today.
And I have to ask you right off the bat, don't you study anthropology?
Yep. I'm actually an anthropology major. So I want to be like looking into archaeology, but I haven't really taken any of those classes yet. But yeah, right now it's anthropology major. I mean, I've been looking at a lot of this stuff, and I mean, I've been in anthropology before the update even released, so I definitely was really excited when this came out.
So this is really right up your alley. So that's why I was excited to get you on the show. I knew that you loved anthropology, and you demonstrate that through owning the largest museum in the oldest Minecraft server. So it's nice to get your insight on here. I know the other day, I want to dive into this subject because you mentioned the other day to me that you wanted to talk about pottery because you shared a screenshot from a Minecraft movie, and in the village, like I'm going to assume the marketplace area is where that was shot, but there's three pots shown there. Um, do you want to share your thoughts on the significance of the 23 pottery sherds and talk about that image there? Elaborate on that some more.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So one thing that I found pretty interesting about that pot and like the designs of the pots seen in the movie is that they don't really look like the pots we find in the actual game themselves, but they do look like the pots that were shown off in 2020 when they were first showing off like the first aspects of the archaeology update. So back then they were called painted clay pots, and they looked like pretty much like the design that they were in the movie. Like also with like how the decorations were actually painted on as instead of like carved like you kind of see now. Like now it's either like dark paint or carved. Now I do believe that it's just like carved or chiseled instead of like any of that. But in the movie, yeah, we see a rabbit on a pot, cranberries on a pot, or not cranberries. Whatever those berries are that you
Those
find
are
in the
the sweet berries, or
yeah, sweet berries, yeah.
yeah, I
Yes,
think they're
sweet
sweet
berries
berries,
are
right? In the cold biomes.
yeah, in the spruce areas, yeah. I don't really play the newer versions all that much, so I kind of forgot what they were, but yeah,
Hmm.
there's those, there's the rabbit, and I forget what the other one was. So I think there was a third design, but
There
they
is, and
actually
what is it? I couldn't make it out that third one. I even tried to enhance the image, and it's just a little blurry.
yeah, honestly, like when I was just looking at them, like I was just more like focused on the shape themselves because it's I that does just look like two birds or something like that.
Is that what that
Some sort of,
is?
yeah, they look like birds or something like that, or maybe it could just be a pattern going around it.
Yeah,
But
maybe, perhaps, because that'd be interesting if it's a bird, because we don't have too many of those in Minecraft or anything in the sky.
yeah, what is interesting is like while the designs aren't shown in the concept art for the what eventually would become decorated pots, the basic shape seen here is like exactly what the painted clay pots looked like, and also the fact that they're using paint instead of like being chiseled, like I said earlier. So I do think that that was a reference to the old pots, and also something interesting is there is another reference to painted clay pots in the base game, and something we're going to be talking about a bit later, which is of course the trail runes, which kind of the focus of the update. And in the trail rooms, you find there's like a kiln that you find with I think it's got two brick stairs and then a coal block under it. And basically, like these form together as like a sort of kiln that would be used to cook these pots, as seen in the concept art that was shown to us in 2020. So back then, we'd be able to find patterns for these clay pots and then put them together like with like soft clay, and then fire them over these kilns, and that was how you'd create the pots. But obviously now you just have to take four shards or sherds as they call them now, and then put them together on the crafting table, and then there's no fire involved or anything like that. But yeah, you can still see the references to these kilns like as part of the archaeology in the trail runes that you can dig up. I think that's like a really cool feature.
That's extremely fascinating. So that's all part of the 1.20 update, correct? Trails and Tales
Yep.
was when we
Yeah, no, they
received
were
the
all added
pottery.
then. But the it was for the whole painted clay pot and everything like that with the original archaeology stuff was first. I do believe it was slated to be with the Caves and Cliffs update because it was like shown off back in 2020 with a lot of that other stuff. But I do think it was delayed and then made its own thing. I'm not positive on that though.
Well, I must ask you this. What do you prefer? Do you like that old concept art, the images that we see in this movie scene photo, or do you prefer what we received in the update?
I think what we received is pretty cool, but I do think that it could be improved a step further. Like what we saw with the painted clay pots in the concept art, like how they're actually colored, I do think that's like pretty interesting. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I feel like it's a lot of like designs like would be better off with these basic colors. So what I do think is they should come in the basic colors, but then once we have these designs, we should be able to paint them and like dye them specific colors, maybe not the whole pot, but like just the pattern itself, or maybe the pattern itself and then the whole pot, like you could dye a different color. Because we do see like fully dyed terracotta pots in Minecraft dungeons, so they're definitely canon to the world. But I think having more customization options like that would give us the best of both worlds. And then maybe then, like once you like re-dye it and recolor, then you could fire it over the kiln. So that way, it's like actually bringing those structures another use.
I like that idea. I like those ideas, and I also enjoy knowing that canon in dungeons. To me, no, that makes perfect sense that we should be able to dye them, maybe and enhance that symbol on the pot. But it also makes sense to me that we find them, and it's just what they're just black etchings, aren't they?
Yeah.
Essentially in them. But I mean, after you dig something up over time, I suppose color would have worn off it. So that to me makes some sense, just natural degradation of the object from weathering. But yeah, I think I do agree. I think we should be able to repaint them. I think that would be really neat, honestly, because those that photo you shared with me is I do like what that how that looks. I think that looks really cool. That would be look really neat in my villages. I'm just picturing it now. I'd like to move on here. Um, what might these pottery sherds or the pots in general? What might they tell us about ancient civilizations? Do these actually depict the overworld's past?
Well, let's see. I do think that like they're very intentionally placed because there's different structures which you can find these sherds in, and they every single structure has their own generated loot set with the specific sherds. So you won't find desert temple sherds in wells, for example, or in trail ruins. Like they all have their own specific sets. And I do think that like those sets tell a story. For example, the desert temple has the archer, miner, prize being a diamond, and then a skull sherd as well. So that's four sherds, And all of those, I mean, when you think about it, they're like distinctly like human features. Like the archer, for example, we see skeletons, which are clearly like formerly humans or perhaps like ancient builders, as some people like to say. So that's clear. That's like a human feature. And then, so yeah, they're that's also the skull. So that's a human skull, not like a villager head or anything like that. And then prize, like and miner, that's I don't think any other species have been mining or like are very
Hmm.
big into mining. And then obviously prize, I mean, the other races that like the sentient races, like the villagers and the illagers, they prefer emeralds. That's what they're going after. But diamonds seem to be like a pretty human prize, like something that they'd want to be going after. And I do think that humans were the ones that were responsible for mine shafts and desert temples. So it makes sense that those are there in that temple. But in like other stuff like the ocean ruins and the desert wells, we do see like different sherds, which could be like more open ended. And I do think that they imply, like for the desert well, for example, we see a brewer sherd, which is basically like this potion bottle. And I think that that sort of implies that either a wandering trader or witch had set up these as part of their routes. Um, so, so I do think that like the sherds found within the wells, temples, or any other structures are definitely intentionally placed, and they might be some of the strongest examples or clues as to who lived there before us.
Theory intrigues me on your witch and the well. I need to ask you this. Why would the witch set these up? Is it because water is necessary for potion making and these would be more or less way stations for a witch to go to make their potions or get the water they need for it?
That is what I'm thinking, yeah, because in first of all, igloos, like they're most likely belonging to witches. I don't know if you talked about that before on the podcast. I believe you've talked about igloos before, but most people do think that at least like the current like main theory is that igloos were made by witches who are experimenting and trying to cure villagers, um, trying to figure out like the what the cure was, or maybe they'd figured it out and then they're just like leaving that as sort of like a research base. But inside the igloos, we do see a cactus, like a potted cactus, down in the prison room. So that shows that the witches have been to the desert before. Maybe they have stuff that they need out there. Maybe they collect the cactus as part of their potions or whatever. So that shows that they're out there. And I mean, witches do spawn in the desert as well, just randomly out there. So I do think that if they're out there and they rely on potions for pretty much everything that they use, they don't have any other sort of weapons or anything like that. I do think that like they would have been one of the people who would have been inclined to set them up. Obviously, there could have been trade routes, and I do think that there was a lot of like intertrade between different biomes and different civilizations, like across the world. But I think either the witch or the wandering trader, which I'm going to get
Hmm.
into a little bit more later, I do think either one of those two groups would have been responsible for the setting up of those wells.
I'm glad you shed some light on the well. Actually I didn't even put that in my set of questions here, even though
A lot of
the
people
I
forget about
wanted
it.
to touch base on the wells, and so I'm glad you brought that up because I never thought about that being a witch, potentially being the one that needed that as a necessity, and it not being related to the ancient builders, as everybody likes to relate all the structures to the ancient builders. So that's a very intriguing theory to me. That's really neat. So that brewing sherd to you indicates potentially a witch.
Yeah, either a witch or a wandering trader, because the wandering trader is also using a lot of invisibility potions. Like they drink it every
Hmm.
night, and then on top of that, they drink it, I believe, even if it's the daytime, but there's just danger nearby. Haven't spent enough time around them to be 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case for them.
You see,
So they're pretty reliant on it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's just, yeah, I was done there. I was just saying, like, they are pretty reliant on their potions as well.
Yes, yes, they are. I have a whole theory that the wandering trader has some sort of dealings with the cleric for invisibility potions and I don't know, just I go into it in detail in the wandering trader episode, and I don't know, that's interesting that this could be also used for the wandering trader as well, which makes sense because he's wandering the entire overworld. So this heck, maybe it's used by many different peoples in the overworld. you know?
That's actually that could hold a lot of ground because one of there's two shards that you find in the desert well you can excavate from them. And before the episode this morning, actually, I loaded up a World in Creative and I started excavating a well like nearby just to see like what I could find at.
Nice.
And in both of the suspicious sand that I dug up, I found each one of the shards. So one of them being the potion, of course, and the other one being called Arms Up, which depicts what's clearly a human, like raising its arms up, probably in like excitement for finding water. So
That's neat.
that could imply like humans had some sort of part in this, but I don't believe that they were the ones who built it themselves. I think more likely they were travelers who used the wells as they went by, but I do think that they would have been set up by people who would actually be using them on a regular basis in their routes, being either wandering traders or, like I said, witches.
I enjoy those theories. And so, yeah, I know that's extremely interesting. Do you have any other theories on the pottery sherds?
Um, Let's see. So yeah, like I said with the desert temple, I do think that the sherds there suggest a human civilization, just from the aspects of what you see there.
Hmm.
But in the cold ocean ruins, I think it also the sherds that you see there are also like pretty interesting, and I think they suggest a pattern too. So the sherds found in the ocean ruins, specifically the cold ocean ruins, are blade, which is a sword, explorer,
Mm.
a map, mourner, which is obviously the woman, as I think most people would know if they dig up shards. Like that's a one of the more common ones. And then last one is plenty, which is an open chest. So I think the four of those sort of imply like a raider civilization, like people who were pillaging and taking. And I do believe that this was an early illager like enclave, pretty much like different settlements with them like spread throughout these areas in the time before they were flooded. And with the mourner, like people may think like that's kind of strange, like it's not anywhere near an ancient city. But if you look at ancient cities, and I think we're going to be talking a bit about more later, so I'll save most
Hmm.
of it for later. But ancient cities do have a lot of connections to the illagers, and I do believe that the ancient cities were originally constructed by the illagers. So that would be like a reference to them. And like, I do think that these cold ocean ruins were created at some point after the illagers had inhabited these ancient cities.
That's a fascinating statement that the Illagers are the constructors of the ancient cities. Is your is what is
Yeah,
a
both ancient
hypothesis of
cities
yours?
and
Or
cold ocean ruins. Yeah. And I do think that
interesting.
like the ruins we find behind, especially in these shards, like do suggest that.
And
The
what links the sherds to the Illagers in those two regions?
so the realtors are big on raiding. They're big on exploring.
Hmm.
As we see, like most of them, like obviously there's ones that live in mansions, but most of them they're seen like pretty much out in the wilds in Minecraft dungeons. It's or at least in the tie-in novel, they're referred to as different tribes. Most of them being like wandering outside of mansions. So basically, like I do believe that they were like pretty big on exploring. I mean, they're also the first texture for the pillagers like depicts them as pirates. They had like an eye patch, they had like orange robes and all that.
I
But
saw that.
yeah, I think you posted at some point. But like that early version, I mean, it shows like more of a raider group, and I do believe that like they were pretty big on that from the beginning. Like I do think that these raids against the overworlders, like either the villagers or the humans, have been happening for a long time now, and this like shows their early roots of doing that.
Intriguing. No, and we're going to get into a little bit more about the Illagers and villagers towards the end. And I should tell the audience real quick that this will more than likely be a two-part series, because we have a lot to talk about here, and and NightSteak and I, before the recording of this show, discussed that probably best just to cut this in half. So just be prepared for that, folks. We're going to stretch this into a two-parter. But NightSteak, I would like to go ahead now that we discussed some of the pottery sherds. I want to now go into some desert temple theories. Read some off to you, and you put your input and contribute anything you want to it. I kind of just want to get your ideas. These are more like thought provoking than anything. So I would like to start with this theory called Graves of Ancient Builders by Tyrannimus_TTH, found at r/game theorists. And I'll go ahead and read the summary to you. It goes, desert temples are ancient builder graves secured with traps and containing valuable items. Husks found only in deserts are mummified ancient builder bodies, similar to zombies. And that was just the very base summary of that, of their publication they put on Reddit. This theory suggests, from what I read, NightSteak, is these desert temples were graves for ancient builders, with husks being mummified versions of these builders. Do you believe that husks are the preserved, reanimated builders of the desert temples? What do you think of all that?
While I'm not sure that they built the desert temples, I do think that, yeah, husks are a remnant of some sort of civilization that once lived there. And honestly, that does hold a lot of ground. Like them being mummified is the fact that they can't like burn because like they're just fully dried out. Maybe there's
Right?
something in like the difference between corpses that make the other ones burn on this or contact with the sun. But also, I think I don't know if he knew this when making this theory, but this does actually tie into the lore we find in Minecraft Dungeons about desert temples.
Really?
And yeah, in dungeons we see a large desert temple which we can explore the inside of, and inside it, it's like pretty much one big crypt. And the final boss of this desert temple is this pretty much undead necromancer called the Nameless One. And this Nameless One was the ruler of this ancient forgotten kingdom. I think it's just called the Nameless Kingdom. It was a distinctly human civilization, so all of the enemies are like skeletons or zombies, like distinctly human zombies. And I do think that like it's like the I think it had other purposes, but like when we find it, as of now, like as the explorer in dungeons, and then later on, like just in like vanilla Minecraft, I do think it's been converted into a tomb.
That's super interesting. And as the audience knows, I'm completely ignorant to dungeons. So I'm glad you're here to elaborate on all that. I really am. That No, and I thought what they provided there, I never thought about before. I always thought maybe it was their tattered clothes, but heck, all the zombies have clothes on. So I thought it was maybe their tattered clothes that kept them from being burned from the sun. But no, the mummification process made a lot of sense after I read that. I was like, oh, duh. Come on, Dark Lord, duh. And so no, that's really no, I liked your opinion on that night steak. I want to ask, so what's your opinion on the potential Ankh symbol seen on the temple's tower facades? Do you think this is an intentional design hinting at deeper lore? Or is it the knot of Isis, as I suggested in my desert episode? What do you think that symbol is? Is it an Ankh symbol?
So I do think, yeah, it could very well be an Ankh, but at the same time, I don't think it holds any like sort of meaningful lore, because the Desert Temple was one of the first structures added to Minecraft, like all the way back in 2012, and that was sort of back when they didn't have any direction. They wanted to go with the lore. I mean, none of them could have expected, like it was popular back then, but none of them could have expected the game to take off like it would have now. And
Yeah.
it's like they obviously didn't have those same parameters for the story. I don't think they even had any sort of story at that point. So they were just trying to make cool stuff that was unique to the game. So obviously they didn't just make like a straight normal pyramid. They added like other cool stuff to it, kind of making it look like a sphinx in the front with like the two tower kind of things.
Hmm.
But I do think that even if it is an Ankh, I don't think that it has any sort of references that like could be lore significant. Um, I do think that is just more like a part of the or structure's original features that might not really bear ground. But if it does mean life, like maybe if they did keep that symbolism, I feel like I've had this personal theory about these for a while, that the desert temples, like before they became these like tombs or traps that they are now, I think that they used to be like oases, or like pretty much like the center where water used to come down, and those big like pits where the treasure are at the bottom. You know how there's with the TNT trap and everything there. Like I think that that was only added like once the well had dried up. But before that, I actually looked this up earlier, and it's 12 blocks down, 12 blocks deep, to the treasure room and down to the pressure plate itself. And the village wells are only 11 blocks deep, so they are pretty much like almost the exact same depth. and I do think that like there's a good chance that like those could have been wells at some point. And the one block like right above the pressure plate on the surface level is a blue terracotta block, and I think that that could have symbolized the water that used to be there before the oasis dried up and then made this place inhospitable.
I like that theory. You heard it here, folks. Perhaps that was a well where the trap room is.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like that would be like the place that's connected to the water basin. And I was thinking maybe it's like a geyser kind of, and the water would come up from the top like a fountain. And we actually see
Interesting.
something kind of like that in Minecraft Legends, which, by the way, for any listeners here, up until I believe June 5th, it is going to be free on Prime. So anyone's able to pick it up now for either Xbox or PC and check it out themselves. But
Wow.
in Minecraft Dungeons, or no, sorry, Minecraft Legends, there's this object called the Well of Fate, which looks a bit like a ocean monument, but what it is essentially a pyramid that has water coming out from it, and this water is it's like super light. It's almost like glowing, and it's first of all healing, and second of all, it's sort of like I don't know. It's like essential to the overworld or whatever. But like the waters that come from it, like heal everything around it and like make the area like a really lush land. And interestingly enough, in Minecraft Dungeons, the other spin-off game, when you go into the desert temple, you do see like glowing blue water on the insides of it in like different streams. And all around the water is various extinct plants. If you actually look in the texture files, one of them's called like an ancient cycad, which is apparently this super old like flower or whatever. It's been a while since I've done research on it, but it's a lot of like extinct and like unique plants that you don't see anywhere else in Minecraft that are like still growing there. And I do think that like these desert temples had this the water from the well of life, or the sorry, the well of fate. And they either like sprouted them out or it's like they were collected there within the temple. But yeah, I do think that it's very possible, considering that they're open on the top, that these things used to be fountains.
That's wow, that's very intriguing. So you don't think anybody inhabited the main floor?
So I do think that like people could walk around the edges,
Mhm.
but like I think that the treasure room, like what became the treasure room now, was like fully flooded, and I do think like also the towers that we're seeing like on both sides were pretty much extra water basins, and also I do believe like I was looking at the I think it's called the Archaeology room, where it's just like that sort of like the area that's been added recently with the Archaeology update, where you can excavate it and it's just like a little box.
It's
I
the
do think that was
second
like an
room, right? That
yeah,
not the
it's like
trap room. I've read
yeah, not
about
the trap
that.
room. It's the yeah, that's the one with sand and like suspicious sand that you can
Yeah.
fully dig out.
I
That also
couldn't
looks like
find it.
something else that could hold water.
Don't they also have like a windrose pattern on the floor?
Oh
Um,
yeah, no, there is something there. I completely forgot about that. But yeah, there's a pattern on that floor too. So that's definitely something worth looking at again. I do got to take a second look at that, but I do believe that this was something that brought that like holy water essentially from that would just pretty much heal you, and I think that that was what would have created these oases and brought people together. And I mean, you see the creeper faces like all over the desert pyramids,
mhm.
and I think that like that's a sign that there used to be life there. There used to be nature around there, because I mean, think about it. Like creepers are either made of moss or vines,
Yeah.
and you don't see those in like a completely arid desert where there's no sort of life or anything whatsoever. So I do think that creepers back then like would have been seen as like a symbol of prosperity, a symbol that life was in the region. Because I mean, if it's the area is fully dry, creepers like pretty much, at least canonically, wouldn't make sense for them to be sprouting up whatsoever.
That's something I've never thought of before. I that's a interesting theory you have there, my friend. I enjoy that. Do you think the creeper at that time in this theory that you just presented, it just a thought that popped in my head, were they explosive? Do you believe that, okay, I guess what I'm really asking, and this is kind of off topic, but I mean, it's kind of anthropological, I guess. Um, do you think the creeper was biological? Did it biologically evolve to explode, or was that something manipulated by something else? Did something else make it into that abomination?
Like weaponized it.
Yes, weaponize it. Thank you.
That's a good question because In a lot of the cross sections of creepers, including an official one seen in dungeons, like you see
Hmm.
TNT inside them, which makes you think like, yeah, that could be like possibly a weapon. But I do think
Yeah.
more likely it's just like some sort of like evolution of like a more intelligent vine or something like that. That's just trying to spread itself, like almost spore like, where it like
Hmm.
separates and then it like grows from those pieces back out. Maybe it is actually spores, like a fern. I know like ferns have spores if I'm not mistaken. So maybe it's something like that. But I don't think that creepers are intentionally malicious, at least maybe to the player. But outside of that, I think the reason they'd explode is just more to propagate themselves. As far as I'm aware, villagers don't run from creepers.
Hmm.
Illagers don't run from creepers. Golems don't attack creepers, although that could just be a self-preservation mechanism. But I think that the reason they don't do that is because creepers aren't perceived as a threat to anyone else in the world. I mean, they only go after the players. They only attack the players. So I do think that even now, like creepers would still be seen as like a symbol of like prosperity or like a healthy desert. The fact that like there still is some life out there. And yeah, maybe there's a reason that they attacked the players. Maybe humans did something that like severely destroyed the world. Maybe they were responsible for the deserts fully drying out. Because that's another thing in Minecraft Legends, we see a more alive desert. Like there still is, it's still dry, but like we see massive tar pits, which imply that there used to be some other form of life that used to be there, and there's a lot of it. And on top of that, we also see some trees and like other sort of flora out there. So the deserts definitely used to be a lot more alive than they are now. So maybe the humans had something to do with that when they came along.
Well, we do have those big fossils, but we don't have
Yeah,
tar pits, but we do have big fossils. So, and I
yeah,
don't know. I have
those can be found pretty frequently in the desert.
That's what I saw, and I've never found one myself. I don't even have a theory on them. I haven't even really looked that far into it, to be honest with you. But while we're on the subject, what are your thoughts on those mysterious fossils looming out underneath the desert sands?
So in Minecraft Legends, like I'm talking about Legends a lot now, but like they are pretty relevant to the stuff we're talking about because
It's all
a lot of the stuff,
Minecraft.
yeah, a lot of the stuff that happened was in the same age as Legends, and I do think that those big skeletons, like they're going further to show that like stuff used to be bigger that back then. Like the biggest mob in the overworld right now, if I'm not mistaken, is the sniffer, and that even is like pretty much nothing compared to the smallest fossil, the smallest rib cage that we can find here. So I do think that there used to be like a lot larger mobs and larger than we'd even see in Legends. But in Legends, we do see like some significantly bigger mobs. And like there's one that's like a purple tiger, which is like a giant tiger thing. And I do think that that's the skeleton of that would be a lot closer to the stuff that we find here. So I think giant mobs like that are from a prehistoric age. And maybe that could have been like what the tar pits were made out of back in Legends, and they would have existed even further back. Because I mean, there's also is like large fossils seen in Legends, just in like the background too. So I do think that like even the prehistoric times like Legends had their own prehistory before that. So those skeletons, like considering that they're buried like pretty deep down, like they could just be like endlessly old, like before any sort of humanoid creatures walk these lands. So I do think that there's a lot of interesting stuff that could be found from them, but they're I think that they're intentionally like made like not fully identifiable as to like what even like if they're canines or something else. Like I think they try to intentionally keep it vague.
I like that. No, I don't know much about, so I can't really contribute much on that subject. But another thought just occurred to me, and I have to ask you this before I get back on to our second theory here on the desert pyramids. But do you do you think that Mojang, do they have, I know that this isn't supposed to, is supposed to be an open sandbox. There's not supposed to be a canon. There's not supposed to be canon technically to this, but obviously there's stuff going on here unless we're just I can't unless we're just drawing making patterns out of nothingness. I don't think we are, but do you think Mojang has like some like storybook like that describes all of this, pieces it together, like something that they allude to?
I do think they have something. Maybe it's probably not as rough and like or polished up as what's it called? Like they have like some sort of design book that got leaked a while ago, and that's like pretty polished. But like I do think that they have a script somewhere, basically of like maybe not like the full story or everything anything, but like stuff that you shouldn't be like covering, like because like they've already touched on it or they want to like touch on it at some point. Like at one point when the Ravager was getting added, they used to be afraid of rabbits. Like that was like something that was in the early versions, but then Jeb asked for that to be removed because he said that it didn't fit in with like the lore they had around it. So I do think that they definitely
Okay.
have something like internally, but I don't think it's as polished as people would expect from them.
Well,
More just like a bunch of guidelines and stuff.
I almost feel like there would have to be some guidelines and some like almost Minecraft Bible that they that they're going off of in order for them to consistently know where to place like, hey, this like pottery sherd with this symbol goes to this area, like the underwater ancient structure here, or this ancient city, or um the wells that we just talked about or the desert temples. I think and the other many things like even the down to the mobs and how they interact with each other and the blocks and everything. I to me, I feel like there has to be something that kind of guides them in where to place these things. I don't know. It's just that's a theory. Not even really a theory. It's just I have a feeling on it. I don't know. What do you think?
It's funny that you mentioned that because as I was looking this morning, looking at the different armor trims to like see like what I should talk about during the episode, one of
Yeah.
them, like most interesting one I'd say out of the armor trims, is called the Sentry, and the Sentry is basically a trim that shows a almost like cross symbol, like not like a Christian cross, but like it's like a like just like a normal like square cross with a square in the center of it. So in this cross, we see it in I don't know if we see it on Pillager Outpost. I don't believe we do, but we see it in Woodland Mansions on the walls. You could also see it a lot in the Minecraft movie, just in the printings on the walls. But in Minecraft Dungeons and Legends, we also see the symbol too, like in all sorts of villager structures. So, and that's
The
sort of like been
cross.
like the go-to symbol to like understand like if this structure belonged to one of the villagers, illagers. I mean, a lot of people refer to the whole race as a whole as like testificates to separate them from humans because testificates were the name that they were originally called during their first release of the villagers. So
Wow.
yeah, like this is like a symbol of testificates, and we see a lot of it in dungeons. It's
What
utilized. Hmm? Sorry, go
one
ahead.
pause there. I'm sorry to interrupt. What is the testificates?
So testificates, like that was the name that was used for the villagers during their first release. I believe
Really?
it's a Latin word that means the witnesses or like to witness or something like that.
Testify. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Really?
Um,
I that is so interesting. How have I never heard of that?
yeah, it was only like for the first like early versions. Like it would appear above like every villager would just appear above their name, like pretty much like a name tag. But yeah, it was removed shortly after. But I I'm one of the people that started doing it, although I've seen a few others do it over the years. Refer to both villagers and illagers as testificates because, and like witches too, because it's clear that they're like they share the same race, even though they have these differences. It's clear that they have the same origin. So just calling them testificates makes more sense than saying like villagers, illagers, witches every single time you want to talk about them.
And they look
So
like nitwits. I just looked it up, and they were Green Road villagers who wander around aimlessly and don't have any traits, called testificates. Interesting.
yeah, no, back
And they
in that
and
was back in the early versions when it was more just like testing them as they came out.
so the testificates, now that you brought this up and opened up a whole new can of worms, you believe created these crosses?
Yes, this symbolism is seen like in every single testificate settlement in Minecraft dungeons, and we see it in like older places. Like the what do you call it? The End Stronghold. In Minecraft dungeons, we see a lot of testificate symbolism, like this cross. Some people refer to it as the Johannic cross because in one sort of texture in dungeons, they say it's a shield with this cross on it, and I believe it's called the Johann shield. Johann
Really?
or Johann being like a German name. So
Wow.
some people have referred to it as the Johannic cross, even though the devs have never like given any sort of confirmation on what it is themselves. And in Minecraft Legends, you can see it too in different village houses. So it's clear that it's like got some sort of cultural meaning to these people, but we don't really know exactly what it is. Except we know that people have or these societies have united under that symbol, like probably time and time again for generations.
May I add to that, because
Yeah.
mentioning these testificate crosses from ancient times. um, I in my episode, episode 6, deserts, and when we were talking about the Ankh, and I was asking about symbol, maybe I can contribute a little bit. The Ankh, let me see here, according to National Park Service, in my episode, is sometimes referred to as the key of life or the key of the Nile, and represents eternal life in ancient Egypt. It was, and listen to this, it was created by Africans long ago. It is said to be the first or original cross. Some believe the Ankh signifies the link between heaven and earth, while others think it represents the three elements: water, air, and sun. Interestingly, the article also states that the Ankh may be the same as the knot of Isis. They do look similar, and this is me talking the script, and I wondered if the symbol on the temple was indeed the knot of Isis, and then I have a whole thing on the knot of Isis here, but I thought that was interesting. Do you think maybe the testificates were created the desert temples?
Hmm. I do think that, yeah, either I'm not sure like solid whether or not like when I'm thinking about structures usually, and this is like a good thing to think about when you're looking at structures, that the majority of them were created by testificates, like mostly either villagers or illagers, but then some like the igloo were obviously created by witches. But like most of them will like just by default just assume that any structures you see out there were made by testificates. But I do believe that desert temples could have been made by humans due to all the human symbolism found in the sherds and all that, and
Mm-hmm.
also because when we talk about these trims, this testificate cross used to generate in the desert temple, but then on the like one of the first updates after that, after the what are they called? The armor trims were released. The sherd was moved, or sorry, the trim was moved from the desert temple over to the pillager outpost, which is a current testificate settlement. So I do believe that that the fact that they moved that is pretty intentional, and it shows that the desert temples were initially made by humans, or like were mostly utilized by humans. But at the same time, I do think that like um, I I think I don't know if you mentioned this yet, but like how the clerics have the oh yeah, I think you did, how the clerics have the creeper symbol on the back on the cape that they wear,
Cleric's
and how we
cloak.
see like the chiseled creeper like all over these structures. I do think that the testificates used these structures at some point, likely after the builders had died out or the humans had died out.
That's my theory. That kind of lines up with my theory on all that. Uh, Interesting though about the testificates, something that I might have to just do a whole episode over, or get you back on just to talk about that some more.
Oh, there's
Um,
definitely lots to talk about there. Yeah, people love to like say the ancient builders were responsible for everything, but when you really look at it, they didn't do much of, if anything, pretty much. Like
that I
people think they're
enjoy
the ones.
learning about the testificates and knowing that now. I That's a word I hadn't even heard about before, and it kind of shocks me because I've been all over. I feel like the Minecraft wiki pages, and I've been back in the early days of Minecraft, and I didn't stumble upon that. But I haven't also done anything over villagers yet, so
Yeah,
that
and
might be why.
it's mostly just a word used by the historical community. Like I don't really see it outside used outside of like Minecraft lore, like the subreddit. But outside of that, like I feel like I'm the only one that uses it. But
Well, gosh
it's
dang it,
definitely a good term to have.
that's why you're on the show for these terms. We need to get these terms brought out into the light so we know about the history of Minecraft more, because that debunks a lot of theories. Right,
Yeah.
just right there. A lot of the things I'm about to read off probably could be debunked, but I would like to move on to theory number 2, if you don't mind.
But yeah, of course.
Um, you know, we could probably talk about testificates all day, honestly.
Yeah, I
But
could go forever.
theory number 2 here, I have labeled as technology and ceremonies, and this might kind of tie into some testificates, but I do want to pick your brain over what this person had to say. This was written by Fire Pineapple 256, found at r/game theorist on Reddit. And the summary of this theory that they posted is this: a new theory about Minecraft desert temples suggests that they were built for religious worship, which is kind of obvious if you a temple, but with
No,
this is what I found interesting, with the beacon space and sacrificial items supporting this idea. The theory proposes the builders sacrifice mobs to a deity, possibly as a response to the pillagers' creation of the undead. That's a map pat theory, I guess, that they kind of included in this. But anyways, the Ankh symbols and the beacon are seen as connected to this sacrificial practice. That's the end of that summary. And this theory hypothesizes that desert temples house beacons for communication or ceremonial purposes. What do you think of all that, NightSteak? I didn't first off, I didn't realize until that temple can fit a beacon in it. I thought that was super cool to learn.
I do think that's an interesting theory, but I'm not too sure how much ground it holds because obviously it looks like it could fit a beacon, like with like it being like pyramid shaped and having the hole up top. But at the
Mhm.
same time, the beacon would imply that a wither would be killed, and I feel like if a wither was killed, to make the beacons that would be needed for these, we would have been seeing the carved red sandstone, which for those that know or for those that don't know, carved red sandstone or chiseled red sandstone, sorry, it depicts a wither and then some sort of hieroglyphics below it, if I'm recalling that correctly.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
right.
so I feel like if any sort of beacons were involved, we would have seen at least one of those blocks within the desert temple somewhere. Like if not in the structure itself, we would have seen it in the loot table of the suspicious sand that you can dig up there. But we don't see any of that, so I don't think any sort of beacons were involved with the construction of that. As cool as it would be to have a beacon in one of those. I do think that the sacrificial aspect could hold ground, maybe. If these weren't wells, maybe they could have been pits that people were thrown into before they were eventually sealed up and put treasure down there and have had the TNT down there as a trap for anyone that tried to like go and break in and take the loot down there. Maybe those could have just been pitfalls that you dropped people in and just either just had them starve to death in there or die from the fall.
It's a plausible theory there. So so you're pretty much denying that theory based off there's no physical evidence for beacons being housed there. There's no proof of it. Although red sand can be typically these temples, or at least in my world, I've noticed are pretty close to a badlands biome, which isn't far from red sand most of the time.
Yeah,
But I think you do have a good point that there's no physical proof there. But do you think it's just a coincidence that these can are just shaped almost perfectly for the beacon and that there's
I
a
do.
hole for the light to shine out?
I do
Even
think
though,
it's a cool coincidence, but
yeah,
yeah, I do still think it's a coincidence nonetheless. Also, like it doesn't like maybe I could be wrong, but I don't feel like you'd be able to put a full powered beacon in there. And if you were trying to like show this off as like a like sort of like a hint as to like oh like because I know Minecraft likes to do that. They like to hint as to different stuff you can make. Like that's why they added the ruined portals to like hint that you can make a full portal, or they added in the jungle temples they added traps to like hint that you could do stuff with redstone. I
yeah.
think that if they were trying to hint something there, they would have made it like full sized for like a full size beacon in there. But I think the smallest you couldn't be able to do a pretty big beacon in there because it on the inside and in the hollow pyramid section, it's got like massive pillars in there that would like obstruct the full area.
Hmm. Interesting. No, I like your thoughts on that. Just a little sidetrack, but yeah, no, it is interesting. That's why I include this theory into the show. But just a side thought of mine, away from this theory, but on the terms of a pyramid of the temple, I should say. That when I was doing the research for, I believe, the Secret Fridays, I the very first one I did before that, when I was doing research, I only think I did a recording of it, but Notch had it so in Minecraft you would randomly come across these brick pyramids that didn't have the pyramidion or the top part of it. You know, there was just a flat top. But it was old brick and it was super weird. It was the time where they had obsidian walls that formed a crosshair on the overworld where you generated or spawned at and that when
Yeah,
you
it was
came
right at
in.
spawn. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I guess you could follow that brick wall and it would lead you to a brick pyramid. Um, but I wonder if that's a thing was a thing of his, and he just something that he likes pyramids, and I don't know. I wonder if there's a relation there. When was it that these pyramid or desert temples were put in the game? Do you know?
Desert temples were 2012, but I believe the pyramids were like 2009 or 2010, like right at the
Yeah, those were
beginning when
2009, I
yeah,
think.
just testing like terrain generation. And I do think with those first pyramids, people like to theorize about those. I mean, obviously, most people don't know they exist, but like some people that talk about them say like, oh yeah, not just thinking of something there, like this is like the Temple of Herobrine or something like that. Like, but I really
Yeah.
just think that he was just like testing out because the pyramid goes all the way. If I'm not mistaken, the pyramid back then, the brick pyramid goes all the way up to build height. So I do think he was just like testing structures and testing or generation pretty much seeing it, like how they would generate in the world if they come up with any issues like that. So I do think it was more just a test in and of itself. Because I mean,
Mhm.
there wasn't anything to the pyramids; they were like full, like there wasn't any like hollow parts or anything like that. It was just full brick. And I mean, I've honestly found these like pretty interesting. I've talked to a guy in the server I play on, and when I have my museum moved to a different site, we're actually going to be building one of those, like a one to one of those brick pyramids, just like off site, like a
That's
few hundred
cool.
blocks away. So I'm really excited for that.
That's awesome. That's gonna be a huge pyramid, but that's super neat with the original old bricks.
Yeah. I mean, thank God I don't have to pay for it, but because yeah, the bricks are expensive on my server. They do not come by cheap. So
Yeah, well,
it's
you have to keep me yeah, keep me in the loop on that. I wanna know how that goes.
will do. But
Please.
yeah, no, I do think that yeah, the desert temples were a lot more intentional. But even still, like I still think that with the Ankh and all that, like those were just like symbols done for the heck of it. Like they weren't really thinking about lore at that time.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that as well. I think there's probably not nothing too deep there, but I just had to ask. It was something that crossed my mind. I was like, "There's something about pyramids here," but anyways, I thought that theory was interesting about the beacon potentially being able to fit into a desert pyramid is something I never thought about before, but just an interesting theory. I would like to now move on to theory number 3, which I titled Factional War. Um, the author was deleted. They must have deleted their account, so there's no name to report, but it was found at r/Minecraft lore on Reddit. And the summary of this, like this was a long article. I read all these, but this was a long article, and it got summed down to this: two ancient builder factions, desert and jungle, engaged in war, utilizing mobs like creepers as weapons. The jungle builders, more advanced in redstone, likely developed creepers first due to their green color and jungle habitat. The desert temple with the creeper faces is a memorial to fallen soldiers, suggesting the temples were constructed after the war began. And that was the summation I have on that. According to this theory, just there were two ancient builders, the desert builders, who were the masters of construction, and the jungle builders, who were the redstone experts. They engaged in war. How credible do you find this idea, NightSteak?
Interesting, but yeah, I honestly don't think it holds much ground like at all because I mean for a few reasons. Mostly like when you think about it, well, first of all, I got to preface by saying, like, in Minecraft Dungeons, we have a DLC called The Jungle Awakens, which you go into the jungle and you see these structures or like modified versions of these structures. Like in Dungeons, most of the structures like are pretty much amplified, so it expands on them and it shows like a little more like details and whatnot. And one of the interesting details you see in the jungles of Dungeons is statues of villagers everywhere. It's like these little, like, pretty much the size of like the tiki like statues. That like and they're all made of stone, like mossy stone, but they depict like a pretty much like a villager centric nation. Like I don't think any humans were involved in the process whatsoever. So I think that that discredits the ancient builder theory. I do think that the illagers were the or no, sorry, the villagers specifically were the ones who like lived there and they had their own villages there at some point, which were eventually like overtaken by the jungle and obviously like stuff that gets taken over from in the jungle, like you in the real world, like it's hard to find old sites like the mine pyramids and all that. Like a lot of times it's like you go into the jungle and you can't really see them, like because they're so covered with brush. You have to be looking from a satellite and like comparing images and like seeing like could there have been a civilization here at one point just because of all the overgrowth. So I
Hmm.
think that like any sort of civilizations in the jungle would be like fully covered over. But I do think that they used to have villages there, and like all that's left that you can see is the stone monuments being those jungle temples. But I don't think any ancient builders were involved, and if they were completely a villager society, they would not have been at war with anyone else because villagers have been like from the beginning pacifists. So I don't think that theory holds much ground. Also, I mean, even if they were a human society, just by any chance, I it doesn't really make much sense that the two would be going after each other like that. And like just because there's like not enough evidence to support it either way. Um, but like having the creeper symbol on there, like be a symbol of like what happened there, like maybe decimation by creepers, that could make sense maybe. But I don't know if they would have specifically been coming from the jungles as like a targeted attack.
What do you think the significance is of the creeper face etchings in the sandstone that is part of the desert temple? You mentioned earlier perhaps these were wells, or that the desert temple made an oasis as a well, essentially, or a fountain, and the creeper was part of that ecosystem or that microbiome.
Yeah. So I do think that like either yeah, with the initial like creation of that, like creation of it as well, that could have brought forth the creepers and like maybe they were like carving those creepers down in hopes of them attracting more creepers that way. As like having creepers like appear over around the desert would be a sign of good land, like showing that like even these like vines are able to grow it and live healthily. And maybe they did have some sort of religious purpose there, like considering that creepers aren't hostile to villagers, maybe they did like treat them as like some sort of like renowned like special creature. Or maybe it's like these were utilized by the priests long after they were abandoned by whoever originally built them. Like if the so-called like ancient builders were responsible for these desert temples, maybe after they were gone for a long time, the priests of nearby villages would come over here and start using those temples as holy sites, and then only then would they carve those. And we see a lot of that. I mean, in a lot of the Egyptian like sphinxes and stuff like that, over hundreds of thousands of years sometimes, usually just over the course of several hundred years, you see different sphinxes or temples like recarved with different faces on them, especially in Egypt, like to have like different faces of the current ruler, or like they'd cross out stuff that they deemed heretical and they put new stuff down. So it's these structures get modified over time, like as different societies live around them. So maybe it could have been taken on a different use. These temples could have taken on a different use what long after the well had dried, and like after there was no reason to like go back there, the villagers could start to use that for their worship, and maybe they added the creepers there at some point. So it could have been a result of a later society.
And symbols are no different than structures. They get reused and recycled as well throughout
Yeah.
time. And I believe part of my theory of the creeper in episode one, the cleric's cloak, is that the cleric's face was inspired from those symbols etched in the desert temple, and they formed a religion around it. That's a big part of that. So no, I just think it's really interesting to come across these symbols, and there's so many theories you could depict from these. But I'd
Oh,
like to
for
go
sure.
ahead and leave that theory there and conclude that. And I'd like to now move us on to section 4 here. Well, actually, sorry, let me see here. I lost track of time. We're at the hour mark. I'm going to wrap that up for this week, folks, and we're going to come back and touch base because we have a lot more to go through. I'm section 4 here is titled Desert Temple Symbolism and Lore, and it's from my Realm News Insights. I want to go through that a little bit more with you, what I did in my episode. And then after that, I want to, with you, NightSteak, talk about ocean ruins theory, a theory that I pulled from the Wither King, a friend of mine on Twitter and on Blue Sky. So I want to discuss the oceans with you, and then I want to go on the trail ruins, and then some more archaeology features in Minecraft before going into the cleric's cloak and theories in that, and then into armor trims to conclude the show next week when you're on. Is that cool?
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, and before you go, I would like to go ahead if you could just tell the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Reddit at NightSteak. Um, I'll respond there to any messages, any questions, anything like that. You can also find my block display profile where I recreate like Minecraft textures and then make them usable in vanilla. That's blockdisplay.com/nightstick9. You can also find me on Minecraft skins and a few other sites like that. But yeah, that Reddit if you want to contact me. And yeah, of course, as always, thanks for having me on, dude.
It was a blast. As always, Night Steak, you're now like a Realm News contributor, so you're welcome back to the show anytime. It was a pleasure, and I can't wait to get you back on for part 2 coming out next week. Following this one that you just listened to, it's going to be just as exciting, folks. So be here next week. Don't miss it. Just don't miss it. Just don't miss it. Put it on your calendar. Clear your calendar actually for it. And nice take. With that said, you have a great rest of your day, buddy, and I'll talk to you later.
Yep, take care, dude.
Hey, Realm News fans, it's your host, the Dark Lord, the one who puts the real in Realm and expands your mind one block at a time. I am here to tell you that your support means everything. Spread the word by telling friends, liking, and commenting on Spotify or Good Pods. Find me on X, Blue Sky, Reddit, or via email at bio.link/realm news. For more content, join my Patreon at the Copper, Diamond, and VIP tiers for early episodes, bonus content, and newsletters. Find out more at bio.link/realm news. No pressure, though. Just keep listening, liking, and sharing. That's more than enough. Happy crafting, and see you at the next Realm News.